distinguished delegates, and our esteemed virtual audience joining us via YouTube Live. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to this highly anticipated panel discussion at M.R.Resilience 5.0. Today, we embark on a discourse of critical significance, truth in the age of uncertainty, balancing national security, technology, and responsible journalism. In an age where information pirouettes through digital ether at the speed of light, the very notion of truth is simultaneously indispensable and precariously elusive. Where artificial intelligence and deepfakes blur the line between fact and fabrication, our quest for truth becomes both noble and perilous. Today, we shall navigate these complex waters with rigor, reflection, and a touch of intellectual audacity. Guiding this expedition is our moderator, Ayushmann Khurrana, whose skillful interrogation will ensure that our conversation is both probing and perspicuous. Among the themes that shall animate today's discourse are the perennial tension between press freedom and national security, the disruptive implications of AI, deepfakes, and technological innovation on contemporary journalism, the ethical imperatives of transparency, accountability, and responsibility in maintaining public trust. It is now my singular honor to introduce the distinguished paragons of journalistic integrity who shall grace our panel with their sagacity. Please put your hands together for Mr. Chetan Bhattacharji, a seasoned journalist, editorial lead, and climate communications consultant, bringing nearly 3 decades of experience in broadcast digital and environmental reporting, leveraging his expertise to help organizations refine their communicative impact. Our second panelist is Ms. Mirchandani, an award-winning broadcast journalist with vast experience on reporting Indian foreign policy and South Asian affairs. We also have an emerging voice in contemporary media, Ms. Priyanshi Sharma, who's passionate about exploring the intersection of technology, storytelling, and ethical journalism in this digital age. No occasion such as this would be complete without a heartfelt acknowledgement of our visionary leadership. May I invite a round of distinguished applause for our CEO, Ms. Sunita Nambiar, whose discerning stewardship and unwavering vision continue to guide the institution to ever greater heights of excellence. We extend our warm appreciation to Ms. Swati Verma, Executive Producer, Media Shala, whose creative direction and media acumen have been instrumental in bringing such intellectually vibrant forums to life. We also extend our warmest regards to our head of school, Ms. Sabrina Talwar, whose quiet strength, gracious leadership, and steadfast encouragement infuse every endeavor at Charmwood with purpose and poise. We now have the honor of felicitating our esteemed panelists, whose presence here not only enrich our dialogue, but exemplify the very zenith of journalistic excellence. May I now invite our esteemed CEO, Ms. Sunita Nambiar, to graciously honor our distinguished panelists for their invaluable contributions. Ma'am. May I request our panelists to please grace the stage. Thank you, ma'am. We now request our panelists to kindly take their seats, ready to illuminate the discourse with their acumen, nuance, and impeccable judgment. I now hand over the proceedings to our moderator, Ayushmann Khurrana, to guide us through today's discourse.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the M.R.Resilience 5.0 International Press Panel Discussion. My name is Ayushmann Khurrana, and I'll be the panel moderator. Today, we have 3 esteemed panelists. To my left, we have Ms. Priyanshi Sharma. In the center, we have Ms. Mirchandani. And to my far left, we have Mr. Chetan Bhattacharji. The theme for today's panel discussion is Truth in the Age of Uncertainty, balancing national security, technology, and responsible journalism. We will start off with a panel discussion, after which we'll open the floor to audience questions. You may see a QR code in the corner over there, or paste it on the walls next to you. You can scan that QR code, and it will lead you to a Google form where you can ask the questions for the panelists. Photographers may also come down the aisle to click pictures, but we request minimal disruption from the audience during the panel discussion. Let's get started. Let's start off with talking about balancing national security with press freedom. I think we can agree that the most important aspect of a democracy is a well-informed electorate. But at the same time, we have to be mindful that some government operations or information has to remain classified for national interests. How do we balance that line, and how do we contend with the possible concealment of facts from the public in exchange for national interests or national security? We can start off with you, Chetan, sir.
I think that actually is the crux of this entire issue of freedom of press, and it boils down to the day-to-day practice, and it is being challenged on a day-to-day basis, not just in India, but in various countries around the world. In India, at least, the Supreme Court has made it clear that freedom of speech can't be curtailed under the pretext of national security. Everything has to be tested by the reasonableness, whether it's national security, whether it's your defamation, contempt of court, defense matters, that kind of thing. But there's always going to be a challenge on a day-to-day basis, and it boils down to the fact of how strong the institutions are, how strong are the people in charge of those institutions. As far as the press is concerned, the balance on whether something should remain hidden or not, or should remain a secret or not. Orthodox journalism has developed these checks and balances that you decide what is sensitive, what is not sensitive. That kind of editorial legacy has been built up in various organizations and is there amongst various editorial leaders, editors, and things like that. The question that I think we are now faced with in many parts of the world is just how much are you willing to push that? How much are the governments willing to allow that? And the word that I'm using, allow, is also very unfortunate, because it should be free, right? There should be reasonable restraint on both sides, both on the government as well as in news organizations. That is, I think, where at the moment the whole struggle is to find that balance, because the governments are pushing against freedom of speech, and the press either has accepted that in some examples or is pushing back, and that is often at a loss of their various freedoms, whether it might be financial freedom, whether it might be some kind of other legal matters. But I'll leave it with that.
Maya, ma'am.
Thank you for having me. It's a question that has basically dogged my entire journalistic career because I've reported on foreign policy and conflict and national security issues as well. Chetan's kind of gone into the freedom of speech elements of it, so maybe I'll just speak to you from the perspective of how difficult it is to navigate that terrain in the midst of a national security crisis. I think the fact that conflict is an element of newsworthiness and drives audiences to news is something that's well known. Do the audiences have a right to information in that context? Yes, of course they do. How do we find a balance between what is information that is valuable for the public and the citizenry in a democracy, and what is going to end up hampering operational details in the midst of that crisis becomes an area of contention. I think the best way to illustrate this is possibly through some examples. For those who are interested in the history of broadcast journalism, particularly in India, you will know that we've had a few inflection points during which this relationship has been tested. One of them was the Kargil War. I'm giving you recent examples. When I say recent, it's also relative. But one of them was the Kargil War. One of them was the hijacking of IC-814. One of them was the siege of Mumbai, 26/11. And one of them recently, Operation Sindoor. Now, if you realize all these major events involve an international element to the conflict. It involves conflict and a history of war with our neighbor. It involves a lot of emotional sentiment. In two instances, it involved the citizenry in a way that the government did not anticipate, because there were actual hostage crises, which means ordinary Indians, ordinary civilians were impacted by the conflict in ways beyond border villages and cross-border shelling, because that's, you know, in the mind of an audience sitting in Madhya Pradesh, what's happening on the border in Jammu and Kashmir or Punjab is far removed and only impacts them. But if a family member from Madhya Pradesh is on board an aircraft that has been hijacked, then that becomes much closer for them. So these become challenges. In that moment, should the journalist not speak to the family of those concerned because the government doesn't want you to speak to them? Should they not ask the government questions about how are you going to negotiate their release, because the government doesn't want those questions asked? The difference that happened between these two hostage crises, similar situations, IC-814 and 26/11, was that during IC-814, the government did not have, and even 26/11, the government actually did not have a mechanism in place through which information could be disseminated. For a brief period, things changed before we've been in a situation where access to the government has become very difficult again. But the idea is that journalists are doing their job by giving information to the public. The government and the journalists have traditionally a confrontational relationship. They're not meant to be friends. Journalists are meant to ask the government questions that they find uncomfortable. But in a situation like this, where lives may be at stake or operational details might be given away, you know, a terrorist handler is going to listen to the news and find out what's happening, or the use of a cell phone is going to give away GPS information. These things become an issue. So after many conversations that journalists something's going on. After many conversations that actually the Broadcasting Association of India, the Press Council of India, journalists who reported on the beat, and bureaucrats and government officials were involved with, the idea was that can we come up with an SOP? I don't think it's the microphone. This one? Okay. I've got nothing on me. My phone's there. Just to... Yes, Swati. I'm just clarifying. I have Swati in my ears telling me, you know, your cell phone is causing disturbance or whatever, something like that. But anyway. So what I was saying is that basically through a process of conversations, the idea was, can we come up with an SOP for situations like this? What would those SOPs require? That you appoint a spokesperson, the government appoints a spokesperson who holds timely briefings and provides information to journalists in a timely manner, so journalists are not, you know, breaking barriers and crossing lines. And I mean, there was also a time when journalists did not want to you know, report. Nowadays, journalists want to get into everything, and the sort of selfie culture means that they have to put themselves in that action. Earlier, it was a little different, not entirely different, but a little different. But the idea was that you get information from the source. So it's verifiable information, because it's when you say verified, it's coming from a government source on the record. It cannot get more verifiable than that. We saw that during Operation Sindoor to an extent, because we saw that the Foreign Secretary and the two representatives of the Air Force and the Army were giving daily briefings. Now, the question is, in a 24-hour news cycle, in the digital space that we're in, are daily briefings enough? And in the absence of daily briefings, are self-appointed social media journalists going to come up with their own version of events? Some of it might be true, some of it may not be true. Is it going to end up causing some operational details? So this is a very complicated dance. We do have a set of SOPs in place. It's a tragedy that the political wing of government doesn't seem to honor that. But the Ministry of External Affairs has a system of briefings. The Ministry of Defense has a system of briefings. And in these times where national security is being reported on, it is incumbent on the journalist to actually go and get information from these people. Off-the-record information becomes a little more tricky, because off-the-record information means that you need to be able to ensure that the person who's given you that information is not going to turn around and deny it and say, well, I never said that, so I don't know where you're getting that information from. Which is why we talk about double sourcing and triple sourcing information, so that, yeah. Well, in today's day, even triple sourcing is good. So, that the one person who said, by the way, oh, hey, you didn't hear it from me, but a Rafale jet went down, but you didn't hear it from me. So journalists, accredited journalists, get this information, go out there and say, we've lost a Rafale jet. And what happens? The government doesn't want this information out, so because it will feed into the hands of the enemy. These are all terms that are used to create a sense of duty, patriotism, emotion, things like that on the field. Look, as journalists, we are also citizens of India. We are not unpatriotic. We are not going to deliberately do something against the national interest, but we do need you to tell us what's going on, because the public has a right to know. It's the public's taxpayer money that's paid for these Rafale jets. Why have they gone down on the first instance, right? So it becomes confrontational, it becomes contentious, but I think if we can all agree that this is a dance that takes place between the reporter on the field and the bureaucracy, which is expected to give and hold back information, you come up with an understanding. And in times of national security crises, I think the public itself is, I don't even know what to say about verified news sources anymore, honestly, because, we watch news television and we look and say, what on earth is going on? So I don't even want to say verified news sources, but yeah, I guess we do need to have some way of identifying that, if I go to the Hindu website, for example, I can feel a little assured that what I'm getting is accurate and verified. Same with the Indian Express. I think papers still have a little bit of that. Television, honestly, I left it. I stopped watching it. So, yeah, I don't know. I went off topic, but yeah, whatever.
No, those are valid points. Priyanshi, ma'am, fresh perspective maybe?
Check. Yes. Okay, full disclosure, I'm extremely inexperienced compared to the veterans I'm sharing the stage with today. I'm not age shaming you guys. But
Senior journalist, veteran. I hate all these terms. Yeah.
we should come up with a new one.
Just reporter.
Okay, with the reporters that I'm sharing the stage with today. But what I can talk to you about is the intersection of new media with traditional media, and how these issues play out in that intersection. So how Chetan sir spoke about editorial legacy and processes that are set up in traditional media, and those are some of the processes that I learned from him while I was working at NDTV. And the problem, I think, from my limited experience, comes in because every news channel wants to be the first to break a piece of news. On the night after Operation Sindoor is a night that looked like this. You can? Can you hear me? Okay, great. On the night after Operation Sindoor, most of us were. Can you hear me? Yes. Most of us were up, most of us were trying to find out what's happening. That was a sleepless night for not just journalists, but every citizen of the country. And that night, to feed into that curiosity of yours, to constantly know what's happening, news channels were practically cooking stories out of thin air. Based on which channel you're watching, the next day you would think we've bombed Karachi or we've bombed Islamabad or Lahore, based on which channel you're watching. And that we were watching it while it was happening, and I think most of you watched it as well. And a lot of that comes in with that competition of being the first. I'm currently running a digital news organization, and while we were watching all of this, we also constantly fought that internal debate that we need to tell our viewers this. If X, Y, and Z, three credible national news channels are saying this, then it must be true. But we had to resist that feeling, which is a tough feeling to resist. And I think in those times of active conflict, let's say in those 3-4 days of active conflict, a good practice for reporters is to stick to what the government wants people to know. As Maya ma'am also spoke about the sensitivity of national security versus people's right to information. People want to know what's happening, but I think during active times of conflict, we only tell people what the government wants people to know only during those 3-4 days, and after which these questions and these source-based informations on what we lost during the war come up. But I don't think any journalists who were reporting on the war at that time, as you mentioned, accredited journalists and not so many of those that are coming up on social media every day, none of them went into these matters during those 2 days of conflict, because at that time, it's your job to give out the primary information that's coming out from our own government. So I think that's one important distinction to draw right at the start. Now I want to come to social media journalism. And unfortunately, as much as social media journalism was supposed to be the panacea for all of these problems with traditional media, it has ended up carrying a lot of these issues as well. And during Operation Sindoor, this was proved yet again on social media as well. I know a bunch of influencers who started making news and informative content during Operation Sindoor, and now they've amassed millions of followers and millions of views. I'll share some of those with you, and you'd love to see them. Just because they were making like 10 videos a day, 10 videos a day. So you felt like there's somebody who's constantly giving you information that news channels are not giving you, government's not giving you. This person is suddenly the messiah that's giving you all the information. But where is their information coming from? You think that senior journalists are not getting the information that this 23-year-old on the internet is giving you. Where do you think they're getting it from? They're simply trying to feed in that curiosity and get views and followers out of you. So I think another distinction that needs to be drawn on social media is the distinction between journalists and influencers. Everybody can look like a journalist on social media today. You simply need a camera and a mic. You don't even need a mic, you just need a camera. So it's extremely easy, and it's the easiest thing to put independent journalist on your Instagram bio, but that doesn't make you a journalist. So that's another distinction that we need to draw. But as common viewers and citizens, I think we need to know that the fog of war now doesn't just exist during times of conflict and war. This sort of fog of war situation now exists throughout the year, throughout different phases that we see. It's not just during times of conflict. We have fake news spreading throughout the year. Even official party people regularly spread fake news on Twitter, on social media platforms that then fuel confusion, fuel hate, and it only goes on to become worse from there. So I think as citizens, we need to know that it's our responsibility to not trust what we see. And as a journalist, I hate to say this, that we need to stop trusting what we see, but as ma'am said, that there are still credible platforms, and it's our responsibility to not feed on those curiosity seekers and those who are trying to just bank on our curiosity and bank on our attention span. And we need to put that effort to find out those verified sources.
Well said, ma'am. This is just a general question. Chetan sir talked about it a little bit. You guys also talked about it. There's a struggle between the government and the press for the release of information. The government obviously wants less information to be released, and the press wants to inform the public as well as possible. But there's also a power imbalance between the government and the journalists, obviously, because the government can deem any matter a matter of national security. How do the journalists end up pushing back? Like, do they have a freedom to push back enough? Obviously, Chetan sir said there are consequences, but I believe the journalists have an ethical responsibility to try and get the information out to the public. What's that process like, and how can we make sure that freedom of press is not abridged by a government just saying every matter is a matter of national security, you cannot release this information until we say so? Priyanshi, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, sure. So firstly, as I said, that during times of conflict, I think it was my practice this time during Operation Sindoor to stick to what the government wanted people to know. But after that, after a week had passed, all of us started asking questions on the Rafales we lost, on how on how we were getting different kinds of information on what actually happened during the ceasefire. Our government was saying there was no involvement from the US. Trump was saying he was the only one who stopped this war. Pakistan was saying that, yes, Pakistan agreed with Trump that Trump did intervene, but we were not ready to accept that. So we still actually don't know what happened in that ceasefire and who actually made it happen. We said Pakistan reached out to us, but Trump had another story. But that's to show you that for these kind of issues, it's our right to ask questions, because as ma'am said, this is our money that's paying for these operations, that's paying for this defense equipment, that's paying for the diplomacy that's going on. So after that, these questions need to come up, these questions need to be asked by journalists. But why I said that during times of conflict, this can be avoided for a day or two is because then, as unfortunate as that is, it's extremely easy for you to be labeled anti-national simply because you're questioning the government. Even though you do it after a week or 2 weeks, or even after I ask this today, it is possible that I'll be termed anti-national simply for asking a question. Any question that you ask of the army or of the Ministry of Defense is apparently supposed to be anti-national. But yeah, so I think that's the problem. But we, as journalists, steer clear of that, and I think we become immune to those kind of labels beyond a point because we remember our duty. And that reminds me of one other example while I was talking of fake news, and while I was talking of traditional media ending up running such fake news during this Operation Sindoor. One example is that it's not that they don't have the resources to fact check a video before putting it on. We were a team of 3 people during Operation Sindoor, and there were multiple videos that were going on certain national news channels. And it took me, I did this alone, and my co-founder, both of us were together, and it took us 5 minutes to fact check this one video that was the first to go on all news channels that was supposedly showing our attacks on Pakistan. And it took us 5 minutes to find out that that was a video from Israel. So if 2 people could do it in 5 minutes, it's not possible that these news channels with hundreds of people in their teams couldn't do it. They don't want to do it because they want to be the first, because they want to keep you hooked. So I think that becomes the problem that they're not able to overcome. They can do it, but unfortunately they don't want to at times.
Maya, ma'am, thoughts? Do you think the government uses the term national security to classify information too much, maybe?
I think they use the term national interest more than they use national security, because national security is a very specific and narrow term. But yeah, anything could be in the national interest. Criticizing government policy could be in the national interest, against the national interest. Asking why healthcare doesn't work is giving India a bad reputation outside. So yeah, lots of things are considered to be against the national interest, especially when you're asking questions where the government looks bad. We were having this conversation just before we came in here. What is the fundamental role of a journalist in society? The idea is that journalism is a public good. journalism functions in the national interest because it is the citizens' right to know whether their especially in a democracy, whether their elected representatives are fulfilling the promises that they have made to the voting public, whether even people who do not vote for them are receiving what any government should be doing for its citizens. These are questions journalists have to ask, right? Today we talk about, jobless growth. India's GDP is rising, but where are the jobs? Or food inflation is so high. Is the monsoon, the horrific monsoon that we've had, going to impact the way food prices rise as we go into winter? Or any question that could be a potential question. Oil prices have fallen globally. Why are Indian prices not falling? You can ask any of this, but what has happened today is that party interest has become government interest, and government interest has become national interest. And there's a straight line that's being drawn between all three. So if you're questioning any of these earlier two, you end up questioning, no, I'm actually doing my patriotic duty as an Indian journalist by asking these questions. Who are you to decide? But you don't like my questions, so you will go file an FIR, you will go and slap some case against a social media post I may have done, you'll troll me and shut me up on my, Twitter or X page or whatever you want to call it these days. You will reduce sources of funding from news organizations that are inimical to your interests. You will squeeze out the channel that all three of us have worked for, and make sure that friendly corporates buy it over so you can control the messaging. So, I mean, journalism is not today what it used to be. Look, I say journalism is a public good, but journalists are also people who need to earn a living. And that really becomes a crisis, because when earning a living means that you have to park your ethics or park your conscience and do what some editor who's received an instruction is telling you, it doesn't sit right with us as journalists, but we also have to pay the bills. So this is a thing. And I think that's where now, I mean, the model is shifting, because at the end of the day, in order for the public to understand the value of good, ethical, verifiable, accurate journalism, they also need to understand that journalism, while it is a public good, it cannot be free. So I'm not here advertising for news laundry in case in case anyone thinks about paying to keep news free. But yeah, you do, actually, because the kind of portals that we all write for and offer our services to don't have the money to pay us. And therefore, when you don't want to pay for news, reporting is expensive, field reporting is expensive. When you don't want to pay for news, what do? You put on views. So you put on two people and with opposing views on a studio set, and you have them shout at each other, and you gather your views that way. I can stand in front of a camera and tell you everything I think about a story without actually having gone to the field, and I'll generate 100,000 views in an hour. That's not news. So you can't have opinion masquerading as news and then say, I'm getting news for free on ABC YouTube channel, but not, where do you think the person's getting their money from? Right?
Chetan, sir, any final
I go
thoughts?
off topic a lot, sorry.
Very true. I think I'll just add one more thing to what Maya and Priyanshi has said, is that it's not just a pushback between the government and the and journalists, but there's a third person, which is the individual, the citizen that we've spoken about. As an individual, what is it? Why does this matter? Right? Maya has spoken about jobs, about all sorts of issues. You can add a whole list of things to this, corruption and sanitation and property prices and jobs and whatnot. the thing is that a lot of the students who are attending this two-day session, they are either already at voting age or will be at the voting age. They have a stake in this argument, in this discussion, right? And they need to be questioning also. So the point to what Priyanshi was saying, that, this video that you're saying, is it genuine, is it not genuine? These are questions which matter on a day-to-day basis. We are consuming so much video, a lot of it is frankly rubbish. And you need to be able to navigate it, and you shouldn't sort of take it to heart or take it seriously and saying, oh, I saw something or the other on Twitter or on Instagram, and therefore it must be true. The idea is that as young citizens, as young first-time voters, get into the practice of questioning, of understanding the facts for yourself, of being able to discern what is true, what is untrue. It's difficult. As Priyanshi pointed out, it's difficult even for news channels to do so, whether willfully or through sheer ignorance. But I think that is something that is a very integral part of this entire discussion that we're having of national interest, or national security, whatever you call it, between the government and the journalist.
Just one point to what Chetan sir said, that it is difficult, but this thought came to me recently, that we spend so much time looking at reviews for dresses before ordering them, or looking for reviews for a dish that we're ordering. Okay, a Zomato dish is still going inside our body, I understand that. But for a dress or for a makeup product, we look at all possible reviews. We also watch YouTube videos to research whether this lip gloss is going to be good for me, or whether this skirt is going to look good on me. Why can't we spend just 10 seconds on searching for this piece of news that we're seeing on social media? So it's fully dependent on what we think is important for us. We just don't think that this is important for us. We just don't think that it's important for me to know whether this video I'm watching or this piece of information this person's giving me is true or not. We just don't think it's important, and that needs to change. Why you don't think it's important is possibly, it's also cool these days to say that I'm apolitical and I don't care a lot about these things, which is fine. I don't want to be judgmental here at all. But this politics is going to show up in the fee that you pay for your college when you enter college in a few years. This politics is going to show up in the kind of jobs that you'll have available for you after you end your college. This politics is going to show up in the kind of health services you're going to have with the money you're going to make after your first job. This politics is going to show up in your petrol bill every week. This politics is going to show up everywhere. So can you afford to not think that this is important for you? That's for you to decide.
Well said, ma'am. Let's shift our focus to technology a little bit, and we'll start off with you, Priyanshi, ma'am, because you talked about this earlier, about the verification of news information or videos. In the last 2-3 years, we've seen a boom in the AI and deepfake technology, and obviously a rise of misinformation leading from that. So this question would be a two-parter. How has the verification process changed when it comes to verifying information, images or videos, especially that anyone sitting at home can now generate a video with any public figure? And the second part is, do you think AI and deepfake has a beneficial role to play in the field of journalism, maybe in the creation of news columns or news blogs, just AI-generated content? Because we're already seeing AI anchors on traditional media houses, as well as infotainment influencers online.
The first part of your question first. How has verification changed with artificial intelligence coming in? I think earlier, the only thing, the part that you had to verify was, is this video from this current India-Pakistan conflict? That's what you had to verify, whether this video is from some other conflict or some other war. Now you have to verify whether this video is of a conflict at all, whether this video is a real video at all. It doesn't just have to be an old video that's being resurfaced, that's being repurposed as the current conflict's video. It could just be a completely imaginary video. So I think that's made the process all the more difficult. So as I said, that earlier you were to identify how old this video, and you have those fact-checking mechanisms to find out. Even a simple Google image search gives you the oldest source of that video or that picture, and you can easily find out. And that again takes 10 seconds, a Google image search, to find out the origin of a picture of a video. And when you find out that that picture is actually from 10 years ago or from 5 years ago, you find out that it's fake. It's being repurposed as the current news's video or picture. So that was one way of finding out whether an old visual is being reused. But how to find out whether a piece is AI generated? It's a practice, it's an advised practice to always write AI generated whenever you're using AI content, but nobody follows that practice, be it AI anchors, be it AI videos or pictures that are also used on the internet. So I think the thing for us to keep in mind here is that while these videos and pictures look so realistic that it's impossible for us to find out whether they're fake or not, but again, it comes down to the same point that my ma'am was earlier making, that we need to know what are the sources that we can trust. And if something is coming from a completely different source that you can't verify from the source that you trust, then it's likely to be not true. Or even if it's true, then you shouldn't take it entirely on face value, because I don't think that as citizens you can find out whether an AI video is fake or not very easily while carrying out your daily activities. So that has changed a lot, but I think you can still take that time to do a quick Google image search to find out whether that video exists anywhere. Even an AI image or video, you will be able to see whether that visual exists anywhere else through a Google image search. So that can also tell you that if it only exists on one platform, it's not possible that your favorite influencer has this highly classified information that nobody else has. So if nobody else has that picture or visual, then it's likely to be exclusively fake for that person that's showing you. Then the next question that you asked me was,
the use of AI anchors or AI-generated news content.
yes, so now AI anchors are not limited to social media. You have AI avatars of influencers coming up on social media. And even on traditional media, you have full-fledged shows that are fully anchored by AI news anchors on mainstream traditional news platforms. And how that changes things, I think, is especially on social media, you can barely make out whether that's an AI avatar, because A, they put very few seconds of their own visual and you keep getting B-roll. So they rarely give you any time to sort of watch and register whether this person's AI or not. You see them for a second saying half a word and then it again goes into B-roll. So you're never meant to find out that this is AI generated. But I think how that changes things for traditional media, which I think my ma'am and Chetan sir would be able to talk better about, is that they can't handle breaking news situations. I don't know what happens in these shows when breaking news happens and an AI anchor is anchoring the show. I've never watched one of them, but I think, have you watched one of those shows? Yeah, so I can't think of what the AI anchor would do when there's a breaking news situation. I'm sure that a real anchor would definitely step in. Yeah, yeah.
But I'm guessing that will also change with LLMs and things like that very quickly before we know it. I mean, the
Will
AI
adapt
anchor will be able to adapt. That's,
Yeah.
I feel, I don't know enough about it.
Yeah, I think that'll start happening. So I think the it's not all negative. This can also increase efficiency in a lot of places. Like, we're also trying to integrate artificial intelligence in my organization, Peak TV, because how we're thinking of bringing it in is we take care of the scripts. We take care of what's being said. It's just that instead of me, it's going to be an AI avatar of me, which looks like me and talks like me and everything. But what I'm saying, the information I'm giving you, or any kind of even an opinion that I'm giving you is mine. It can be attached to me. It doesn't have to be attached to an artificial intelligence. So the problem comes when you put everything on AI. You put research, scripting, production, everything on AI. And recently you might have seen this, that Deloitte actually had to pay the Australian government about $400,000 because they submitted a report to them which was AI generated. Deloitte, which is a company which has, I don't know how many employees globally, but still they submitted a report to the government which was AI generated. It had citations and attributions to people that didn't exist. It had quoted people and researchers that didn't exist. It quoted peer-reviewed journals that didn't exist on the face of the earth, and that was all AI generated. And that was caught by by such higher levels of the government and of a big private organization. So if they're doing it, you know how big this danger is becoming. And the danger is when you leave everything on AI. This one thing that one of my professors at ISB had said, which I really stick to: you must must use AI as not the ceiling, but as the floor. You use it as your floor research. You use it for your grammatical checks, for your spelling checks. That's absolutely good to use. You don't need an intern to check your spellings and grammar for a copy that you're putting out. You use ChatGPT, you use AI for those purposes. But again, you use it as your floor and not as the ceiling. You don't start thinking that if ChatGPT has given you so much research on a topic, this is as good as it gets. No, it doesn't. You, as a human brain, can do a lot more than that and can actually get to real people and real research papers as against what ChatGPT is giving these days.
Maya ma'am, do you think AI and like deepfake videos, Gen AI, do you think they can be helpful in the field of journalism? Is it ethical to generate maybe a news column or a news blog script using an LLM?
I think I agree with what Priyanshi said, which is about the efficiency that it might bring to your day-to-day, bread and butter kind of work, which is where do you start from, where do you do your grammar check, you've done an interview, can you have it transcribed really quickly so you can pull out the quotes, those kinds of things. But you have to put in the work. So from my understanding, and I have very limited understanding of AI, is that a lot depends on the prompts and how you frame the prompts that you give it. So the more specific the prompt is, correct me if I'm wrong, the more specific the prompt is, the more verifiable or accurate your information will be. And they also always give you links where you can actually log on to, and so do that work. It's hard work, but do it. And you don't have to agree with everything that AI shows your way. One of the things that, as faculty in a university, we're struggling with how to deal with students who produce their assignments in AI. I'm sure many of you here are as well. One of them is to basically say, okay, fine, tell us that you used AI for this, and do it without AI and, see which one you like better. Let's start with that. Like, how do you like it better? Are these your thoughts?
Yeah.
Do you agree with what this is giving you? That's one way. But I want to just take it back to a slightly older but bigger problem, because, a part of my work post NDTV has also been about misinformation and radicalization and how that translates into the real world from the virtual world. And the idea that, bots and automation end up amplifying things at the speed of light, and rumors are as old as time, but technology means those rumors can reach breakneck speed really quickly, and how that impacts us. So we don't know what to believe, because we're also getting information that's coming in at a volume and pace that we as human beings are not able to deal with. So I don't know, while it is desirable for us to be able to check everything, I also don't know how feasible it is. So that becomes a problem. And the bigger problem with AI is, I would say, manipulated content, deliberately. So the distinguishing factor between misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation is the intention. And intention is a human thing, right? So how do you identify what the intention is? We have, let's say, deepfake AI generated video of Barack Obama being Trump's best friend. We know not to believe it, right? We know, like, this is not true. It's an obvious thing. But somebody smarter could do something really nuanced and say, Barack Obama, which he has, welcomed the Gaza peace plan, for example, and in that says, I think because of the fact that Trump has been able to convince these sides to agree to a ceasefire and the peace plan, maybe we do need to think about the fact that he deserves a Global Peace Prize. Now, you'll stop to think and say, did Obama really say this? But everything else before it sounds like he has said it. So, maybe he has said this also, and it's in Obama's face and Obama's voice, because AI can pick that up. And as human beings, psychologists will tell you, and people who are working on data and psychology will tell you that we have now learned not to necessarily believe all the video that we see, but we get fooled by the authenticity of the voice. And a machine-generated voice that sounds like Priyanshi, I will think it's Priyanshi talking to me, right? And so it looks like Priyanshi. It also sounds like Priyanshi. For now, we can tell AI-generated audio. We're good at that. But tomorrow we won't be able to. And really, really capable AI users will be able to create these deepfakes that sound like people we know, we hear, we're familiar with their voices. I mean, tomorrow if an AI-generated song by Miley Cyrus sounds like Miley Cyrus, we'll think it's Miley Cyrus, right? So it's not easy, and the potential for harm is great. I don't think anybody who says they have an answer for this is being honest, because frankly, no one does.
I'd like to sort of flip the question somewhat and say that, AI is here to stay, it's a juggernaut, and how do we embrace it? Whatever Priyanshi and Maya said is absolutely true, especially as far as ascertaining whether it's going to be it's fake or if it's genuine or how to verify it. All those questions are critical, but it's not going to go away, right? We have to learn to live with it. Yes, AI will be used for efficiencies, and I've tried to use it in my writings and developed an AI agent for it and also, but it just took me longer and longer because it was turning out unusable. So at least I didn't want to put my byline with that, with the articles it was producing. So what do we do with it? What do we do with AI which will be used for putting out news and other kinds of videos and information? One possible solution is to look at the kind of way traditional news media has been, or traditionally news media has been regulated. It has been, at least in the Indian example, been self-regulated. That's a bit difficult, but supposing, I mean, this is an idea, supposing there are various organizations, to build on Priyanshi's idea, who say that this is how we're going to declare or disclose how we are using AI. We are using AI to go through massive amounts of data. We are using AI to fix our grammar. We are using AI to edit the story. So that kind of disclosure up there in your little bio on your Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever it might be on your website, that could be one, so that it becomes standard practice and builds trust. Rebuilding the trust that a lot of people had in, say, the press maybe about 30 years ago, 40 years ago, that is going to be the challenge in the years ahead. And we have AI to contend with. It's not going to go anywhere. It's going to get better and better. You're going to have these AI channels which are going to challenge people like Priyanshi more and more. So we have to sort of figure out on how to actually keep that trust going between a journalist's work, a genuine journalist, and the viewer.
Got it. We've indirectly talked about ethics a lot during this conversation. I think we can all agree that news is only as informative as the context in which it is given. And obviously, as news reporters, as journalists, everyone has a certain level of moral biases, maybe subconscious or conscious, or political biases, political stances. How do you as journalists deal with those biases and making sure that they don't come out during news reporting? And do you think maybe in increasing political divide globally nowadays, it would be more beneficial for the public to know the political stances of a journalist or a news organization when they're reporting on political content?
Thanks for looking towards me. I think I can speak from the point of view from a mainstream news organization. The advantage of that was that it had a lot of built-in checks and balances. Anybody watching it may presume some kind of bias that, okay, this reporter or that anchor or that network has XYZ bias, but the advantage of having a reasonably decent-sized team is that there are checks and balances which are built in, right? You might have one particular belief, you might vote for one particular party, but the point is when you're out there, those biases can become very transparent if you try and do your work only according to that. Any professional journalist is likely to get a sort of a 360 view on it, get viewpoints, sound bites, quotes from all sides of the parties involved, or as many sides as possible. And if you don't get them, disclose that, declare that we tried speaking to XYZ and they said whatever, they didn't respond. So there's that level of transparency which helps to build trust. Of course, everyone will have their own biases, they will vote in a certain way, but you can help build trust and says, like what used to happen at NDTV, they used to say, okay, they may be biased in this way, but look at the stories they're doing there, at least nobody else is reporting on this, and this became more and more true towards the later years.
I have a slightly different response to this. Journalists will have political opinions. They are also citizens of this country. They are also, or any country, they are also voting citizens. Their duty is to leave their politics out of their reporting, right? And the journalist's bias should be in public interest. But there is a line between advocacy and journalism. And I think when journalists cross that line, it becomes a problem. So it's a very fine line. Now, the issue really is this, that if a we've had lots of experience with, particularly in the West, with models where journalists and politicians who have married each other, or bureaucrats and journalists who've married each other, one of the two steps away from that role. Maria Shriver abandoned her job in NBC as a news reporter when she married Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was a Republican governor of California. She couldn't very well do any honest reporting as the governor's wife. When Christiane Amanpour and James Rubin married each other, James Rubin left his job at the State Department, and she continued her career as a journalist. Unfortunately, in India, we do not have those that level of ethics in journalism. I will still say we do not have. When journalists and politicians, or journalists and bureaucrats, these two are confrontational relationships, and one of the two has to step back. I don't care what your politics is. You can vote for the BJP or the Congress or the left or whatever it is. But when it interferes with your personal choices, there is a conflict. And whether you are doing your duty and being objective and honest, that information is in the public domain. The viewer is going to perceive you with that bias, which means your journalism is not only going to be about look at what the other stories that they are doing. Because even look at what the other stories that they're doing, but why are they doing it like this? Why are they not doing it like that? And it becomes a cycle that repeats itself. I can speak from the perspective of, again, foreign policy and conflict and things like that. And I use this in my classes all the time. Bias is about distinguishing between objectivity and neutrality. And I don't think people understand that distinction enough. Neutrality is to present both sides and not really take a position on what is right. There is a right side. There always is a right side. Objectivity is to present both sides and take that position. I'll give you a really small but example from today. India has invited the Afghan Taliban for talks to New Delhi, right? The Taliban minister has held a press conference in the Afghan mission and has not invited the Afghan mission has not invited a single female journalist. It's a deliberate move. We know what their invisibilization of women is all about. They have not invited anyone. The Ministry of External Affairs, which has invited this Taliban government to India for talks, has not said a word to the Afghans about this huge outrage. Should I not ask that question? Is there a right and wrong? Should I say, well, which is what has happened. The Afghans have not invited women journalists to this press conference. The Ministry of External Affairs has issued a clarification saying this has been held in the Afghan mission and they have nothing to do with their private engagements. I've reported both sides, so I'm not telling you what's right or wrong. But if I say The Afghan mission has held this press conference and excluded women. The Ministry of External Affairs has clarified that they had nothing to do with the organizing of this press conference. But while the Afghan mission may be Afghan soil, India is the host country. Their omission of women is a violation of India's fundamental rights for women. Is the Indian Ministry of External Affairs going to sit back and not say anything about this? You tell me, is that objective or not objective? Is it? I don't know. To me, it's objective, but is it biased or is it objective?
I think that would be objectiveness, yeah.
The jury's out, right?
Yeah.
So that's the difference between neutrality and objectivity. How can you tell me not to have a bias? But if I'm married to a bureaucrat in the Ministry of External Affairs and just carry the ministry statement and don't question it, is that a conflict of interest?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty straightforward.
And just to add to that, while I was also reading this last night and this morning, I was actually feeling so angry about it that I wanted to just record a video showing my anger, but I tried to control that because I'm a journalist and we need to keep our emotions aside, unfortunately. Even at times when we personally feel offended by something, we have to keep our emotions aside, and that comes as an occupational hazard, and we do that. But I want to come to that question that you asked, should we declare our political stances? Should journalists declare their political stances? I think that should be a clear no, because then even if Maya ma'am asks the question of why was the Taliban minister allowed to host this press conference that banned women journalists, somebody in the comment section will say that you're saying this because you're a congressee or you're a leftist or you support this party and you don't support the government. Then any journalism that you do will be questioned because of based on which party you support. If I say that I'm a BJP voter, I'm a BJP supporter, then anything that I report that goes against, let's say, the Karnataka government, the Congress government in Karnataka, then I'm only doing that because I'm a BJP supporter. Then my profession is completely disregarded. Any journalistic integrity or any journalistic skill that I might have is completely disregarded, and everything is attached to my politics. We're all voters. We are bound to vote in this country. If you vote for Nota, it doesn't mean anything, so that's a waste of your vote. So we can't not vote, or we can't vote for, vote for any party. So we will have political biases in that sense, but no, they should not be disclosed according to me. And the second part that I want to come to is, we mentioned how do you ensure that your political biases don't come in your work? And that goes back to something really fundamental that I learned in NDTV, is that everything I used to write in my stories or everything I used to say, I remember Chetan sir saying, but who's saying it? You can't say it. Priyanshi can't say this. Even something as basic as the Indian rupee has been falling for the last few months, and it's currently at around 87, 88, 89, I'm guessing. And a host of experts are saying that it's going to go down even further, and that's the trend that we've been seeing for the last few years as well. It is going to go down further. But at the end of my story, if I say this myself, that the Indian rupee is now expected to go down even further, Chetan sir will come and say, you can't say that. Say which economist has told you that, take his name, and then say it. So you attribute whatever you're saying, and that gives credibility to what you're saying. If I say that the Indian rupee is going to go down even further, that's what economist Santosh Mehrotra has said, then I'm attributing it to him. It's a person who's an expert in their field. The rupee has gone down by X% this year. That's what the official data shows. So everything needs to be attributable as long as you're giving information. I think that's what keeps the objective part of it in check. And that's something that, again, distinguishes influencers from journalists, that we have these practices instilled while an influencer would take on a camera and try to bring in their own opinion, their own human emotions to their audiences, which I don't think is the most objective way to bring out information.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are running short on time.
You have 3 journalists on the panel.
Yes. So we would have to conclude this enriching and thought-provoking discussion. We now arrive at the Q&A segment of our discussion, and we have received several thoughtful questions from our delegates and our online audience via the Google form. and we are excited to put these questions forward to our distinguished panelists. First question is for Ms. Maya Mirchandani. Shiraj Khanna wants to ask, in today's media landscape, where most news outlets are either directly or indirectly influenced by political or corporate interests, and even social media platforms are often driven by hidden agendas, how can viewers discern what's truly credible and unbiased? What responsibility do journalists and media organizations have to rebuild public trust in news? And how can audience verify the authenticity of what they consume?
I think Siraj needs to go back and listen to the last hour of our discussions once again.
I totally agree to that.
Because we covered all these topics in the discussion. It is about being conscious of what you're consuming, maybe spending a little time doing some research on the person. I mean, there are simple, these are also outdated, but they're like simple tools. If you haven't heard of a website or a news organization, you're like, what is this? Is this new? I've never heard of it before. If you see clickbait headlines that are all in all caps with 20 exclamation marks, that's not how journalists typically write headlines. I mean, so small things like that, start there and then maybe, but the rest, yeah, listen to the discussion. I'm not repeating it.
So the rest of the questions that I have here, I think if we could replay again, all their questions will be answered. So thank you to all our distinguished panelists for their thoughtful responses, and to our delegates and online participants for your engaging questions. Your curiosity and insight have truly enriched this discussion. And as we draw this session to a close, it's my privilege to invite our head of school, Ms. Sabrina Talwar, to share her reflections and bring today's discussion to a fitting and thoughtful conclusion.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Some of the words that have stayed with me since this morning, and I'd like to kind of share them with you, they resonate quite deeply. Compassion, ethics, empathy, responsible, fact check, ask questions, authenticity of sources, AI deepfakes, advocacy, attributal research, and conscious consumption. So thank you so much for this. Good morning. Our environment and experience shape us, our beliefs, and our ideologies. That is what makes each one of us unique. Whatever our belief and our ideology, it is vital that honesty, objectivity, and humanity remain at the heart of all our actions. My sincere thanks to Chetan, to Priyanshi, and to Maya, and of course, Ayushman, for those penetrating deep questions and thought-provoking perceptions. I am confident today because I think the youth voice is the loudest and carries the farthest. Will continue to be the winds of change. I look forward to the next 2 days of intense exchanges, negotiations, and resolutions. Welcome to Manav Rachna International School, Charmwood, and thank you so much for being part of MUN 5.0.